digital HR strategy. So I would like to start off with a story. This is a story about Jane. Jane is an HR business partner. And Jane works for a company with about 1,000 employees, and she has a regular sit-down with management. And one of the most influential managers is Bill. And Bill is a bit of a grumpy guy. And one day, Jane is sitting and Bill is saying, Jane, we have a problem. Because you know what's happening? Jane, you know that we need to recruit a lot of people and we need to do it fast because we are growing very fast as a company. But the problem is, Jane, we're not doing it fast enough. We are losing very good talent to other companies because we are not going fast enough through the recruitment process. And Bill says, Jane, we need to fix this and we need to fix it fast, and I want to solve this. And Jane is listening, and she said, well, Bill, I absolutely understand, and I do see the same problem. I do see that we're losing talent because we are not recruiting fast enough. And Jane has a few ideas what is causing this, but she says, you know, Bill, I agree, we need to fix this. And Bill says, you know, Jane, HR just needs to work faster. The people in recruitment just need to work harder and do a better job. And Jane says, you know what, Bill, I'm going to do some research, and the next meeting we have, I'll come up with some data and make sure that, you know, that we can both solve this problem. And Bill says, well, Jane, that's a good idea. So Jane goes back to her workstation after the meeting. And this company is not using the fancy applicant tracking systems that you see here today. Jane, the company is still working with fairly old-fashioned software. So what does Jane do? Jane opens an Excel sheet, a very simple Excel spreadsheet. And she starts writing down from the past few applicants, you know, the different dates at which the job opened up, the different date at which the vacancy was improved, at which they had set out the application online, got the first few interviews, all the way to the second round of interviews, the hiring decision and contracting, and when the person got to work. So she wrote down all the different dates for a number of different applicants, and she started to keep track of this data for future use. So a month later, Jane is sitting again with Bill. And Bill is saying, you know, Jane, I'm still very frustrated because HR is just not making the right speed. HR is not performing the way it should be performing. You know, we need to hire people faster. And Jane says, yeah, Bill, we spoke about this last time. I really recognize this. Let's take a look at the data, because I made a spreadsheet and I found out 3 of the major bottlenecks in our recruitment process. Would you be interested in looking at this? And Bill, you know, Bill gets excited because Bill sees a solution. Bill's a manager. Bill wants action. Bill says, okay, let's look at the data. So Jane opens up her spreadsheet, and for every phase, she has calculated the average number of days that a candidate, you know, is in that phase before moving on to the next phase. And she says, Bill, there are 3 main bottlenecks, and if you look at the data, you see some clear outliers. So the first bottleneck is at the beginning. It's at the point where, you know, we have a job opening, but it needs to be approved by the manager. And as you can see, this takes multiple days, even though we can do it, you know, we can do it the same day. So getting approval from the manager is always a long process, and it's not going fast enough. And Bill is looking at it and he says, okay, that's interesting, you know, we can work on this and we can make this go faster. Jane says, the second bottleneck is planning interviews with managers. Because, you know, we get the candidates coming in, but then we need to plan a sit down with the manager, and there's always a few days going, you know, a few days in throughput time before that actually completes. And Bill doesn't really like where this is going. He says, yeah, maybe we should, you know, we should be more reactive as managers, but, you know, show us the third bottleneck. And Jane says, you know, the third bottleneck is actually the contracting phase. We have a long list, we reduce it to a short list, we do all the interviews, and then we need to pick a candidate. And that process of picking a candidate is also one of the bottlenecks. And if you look at the data, these are the 3 outliers, these are the 3 bottlenecks in the recruitment process. And Bill doesn't really like where this is going, because, you know, it turns out that the managers are very slow in their response, and that's slowing down the recruitment process. So Jane says, you know, Bill, this is a problem we can work on. You know, it takes 2 to tango, this is a communication problem. We should work together to fix this in a more sustainable way. And Bill absolutely agrees with this. And this is an actual case. They were actually able to reduce the time to recruit new professionals by a substantive amount. And This example, for me, is very simple. It's not complicated data analytics, but it's very simple use of data to make better decisions. And that's what I would like to talk about more today. How can we use data in a way to make smarter decisions? And how can we take this very broad and vague concept called digital HR, and how can we make it slightly more practical and tangible and apply it to our organizations on a day-to-day basis. So that's what I would like to focus on. So I want to start off with people analytics. Give you one or two more examples of people analytics and say, hey, let's get to a definition of what people analytics is. Because can I have a show of hands? Who has heard of people analytics? Okay, that's quite a few. I think in previous years there were also speakers on people analytics, so you might recognize some of the themes. Then next we'll talk about what is digital HR, because digital HR is also one of the conferences is named after digital HR. But what is digital HR? Digital HR is also a very, in a sense, a vague concept, and let's try to come to a definition on what is digital HR. And then let's see what are the synergies between the two. How do digital HR and people analytics come together? How do they integrate, and how can we use both to generate more value in the end to the business? This is a very big picture of me. I'm Eric van Vulpen. I'm the founder of AI-HR. AI-HR is the Academy to Innovate HR. We are the largest online educator in the world in people analytics and digital HR. So we provide courses that skill HR professionals in people analytics and digital HR capabilities. And this is our website. So I want to start off with a very simple question. Why do we measure in HR? Because we keep track of a lot of data. Why do we do it? Anyone who dares to give an answer? Shout something from the public. It's very hard to hear people. So, why do we measure in HR? Well, we measure, to generate data. The next question is, why do we generate that data? What's the purpose of our data, of the metrics that we use? And that's a very good question. In the end, all the data that we collect is about measuring performance. Measuring performance in the broadest sense of the word. So it could be very simple, sometimes we need to collect people's bank accounts because at some point we want to pay them, and if we don't pay them, we have a problem and they don't work for us. Sometimes we need to collect people's citizenship numbers because we need to refer tax information to a tax office. So it can be very practical, it can be very simple information that we need to collect from employees in order to be able to pay them, in order to help them, in order to, in the end, let the business continue. So the ultimate purpose of metrics and of data is measuring performance. And it's very simple. If we're able to measure it, we're able to improve it. So whenever we talk about data and analytics, I want this to be at the forefront of your brain. When we talk about data, data is interesting, but data is very much a means to an end. Data serves a bigger purpose. And that also holds true for HR. So we talk about HR data, not because we really like data, because I think most of us are not in HR because we really like data. We like people, we like to help people. But data can actually be a means, a way to help people in a better way. So that's what I would like to focus on in the next 30 minutes. How can we use this data to make better evidence-based decisions in HR? How can we measure performance and then also improve performance? Because if we're able to do that, then we deliver value as HR professionals. So that brings us to people analytics. What is people analytics? The example that I just gave about Jane is, in my opinion, a very good example about people analytics. People analytics, or HR analytics, is a data-driven approach to managing people at work. So we're using data to manage people in, hopefully, a better way. At least that's the goal. And this is the definition by Galen, Jensen and Stein from 2017, so it's an academic definition, but I think it's very accurate. It's about a data-driven approach of managing people at work. And that's what you saw, in the example of Jane. Jane just looked at the data, Bill had that conception or had the notion that it took a very long time to hire people, and it actually did take a very long time to hire people, but by looking at the data it was very easy to identify a number of bottlenecks and then see what are the steps that we could take. Could we maybe automate the process? Could we maybe have HR managers give a call instead of send an email, because giving a call probably speeds things up a lot more. So are there operating procedures that we can put in place in order to make this process go faster and hire better people in the end faster? So that's what people analytics is about. Now I would like to give you an example, actually probably one of my favorite examples about predictive analytics. And this example is about the police force of a European country. In the police force you have helicopters and police helicopters. Those helicopters are very fast, they're able to get from A to B very quickly, and whenever there's a search and rescue, they're able to, they call it the helicopters to search with infrared cameras and find people. They're very good in car chases and all kinds of emergency situations. Helicopters are used to scan the area to monitor things. And these helicopter pilots are a bit of a challenge to find, because you need people who have a background in aviation. They need to be able to fly a helicopter, because otherwise, they're not going to get in the air, or they'll break down very quickly. And they need to have a police background. So you need people, who have both parts of that education. So the way this police organization traditionally recruited people was through two avenues. First of all, they would take people who came from civilian aviation schools, and they would say, hey, do you want to fly on a police helicopter? That would be awesome. I'll give you a police training, and the police training would be paid for, and then they had the qualification to fly on a police helicopter. Now the second avenue in which they recruited people was by going to normal police officers who already served, were on the street, and saying, we can send you to aviation school. It was much more expensive. We can send you to aviation school, and then you're a police officer with aviation school. You'll be able to fly in a police helicopter, and you'll be able to do an awesome job. The problem was that these police helicopter pilots stayed only for a few years in the job on average, and it was, as you can imagine, it's very expensive to get these people in this position. That's a very high training budget that you need in order to do so, and then they leave within a few years. That's not something that's sustainable. You want people to stay longer in the job, because then they get more experience, they'll be better, and then they'll be better in the end in policing, which is what you're trying to do as a police organization. You're trying to police, in a sense. So what did they do? They looked at the data, this organization. They looked at the data and they tried to find out, what is the difference between the people that quit within a few years and the people that stay maybe 10 or 20 years. Because they were thinking, if we can have those people who stay 10 or 20 years, and if we can hire more of those, it will be a worthwhile investment, and in the end, we'll be better in doing our job as a police organization. So what they found was that the biggest predictor wasn't about age, wasn't about things like gender, it wasn't about other characteristics. The biggest predictor of how long people stayed in a job was about the avenue in which they were recruited. So I said there were two avenues. There were the people who were police officers and then went to flight school, very expensive, and the people who went to flight school and then were trained to be police officers, less expensive, but still pretty expensive. So it turned out that this last group, the people who went to flight school and then did the cheaper police training, they left usually within a few years. While the people who were police officers and then went to flight school, the more expensive training, they stayed much longer. And they stayed so much longer that the much bigger investment was actually very well worth it. So investing in police officers and paying them to go to flight school, even though it's more expensive, it had a much better return on investment. And the question is, why is this? Well, police officers, the police is not an organization that you go to because you see an advertisement and you say, oh, that'd be cool, I'll be a police officer. No, it's much more of a calling. They say once you're a cop, you're always a cop. It's kind of a calling that you see. I want to work in the police, and usually you want to do it as a little boy, and that's something you dream of and you want to do basically for your whole life. A lot of police officers have a very long time on the job. Well, the people who went to flight school first, and did aviation school, they always wanted to be a pilot. They really dreamt being a kid of being a pilot. So they flew a few years in the police helicopter, but then they got, an offer from civilian aviation. And as you might know, civilian aviation, commercial aviation, pays much better than the police. So after a few years of very fun experience, flying police helicopters, that's cool to tell at parties, they would join commercial aviation and get a much bigger salary and, have a bigger paycheck and be very happy. So it turned out that focusing on normal police officers and giving them the relevant training to become helicopter pilots paid off in the end. And if you would now go to actually go to this country's police website and you ask the question, I want to become a helicopter pilot, how do I do this? And it's actually in their FAQ. It says, we only recruit from our own force. So, become a police officer first, and then maybe, don't count on it, because it's a very small percentage, a very small chance that you have, but then maybe you'll come in our flight program and we'll train you to be a police helicopter pilot. So this is a very, again, it's a slightly more complicated example because it requires data analysis, it required looking at historical data, but it shows you the potential impact of using that data, seeing the story that the data is telling you, and then making better decisions that, in the end, results in police officers who have much more experience. If those police officers quit flying, they usually stayed in the police organization, so they could work as trainers in the police organization, train the new generation of helicopter pilots, so you keep the knowledge in the organization, and there would be a much better return on investment. Even though the initial investment is higher, the return is much greater. So that's one of my favorite examples of people analytics and why I'm so enthusiastic about the possibilities that working with data offers, because it enables you to tell stories that really make an impact in the organization and that in the end help you to make better decisions. So when we talk about people analytics, making better people decisions in a data-driven way, I think this is a good example. So people analytics has become quite popular in the recent few years, I would say. And this has a few reasons. Where I would say the focus of people analytics, or the focus in HR traditionally has been very much on efficiency. We have a certain budget and we try to reach our goals, and then the next year we get a budget cut and we have less money and we're expected to do the same thing. And then the year after we get even less money and we're still expected to do the same thing. That's a focus on efficiency, and that's the efficiency, very financially driven thinking has been going on for a long time. Now, with people analytics and by using data, we can make decisions in a different way. Instead of looking purely at financial numbers, we can say, hey, what is the impact that we're having? For example, we can focus on, we need to hire people at the lowest possible cost. That's all fun and games, but the question is, are we actually hiring the right people? Because I'm a business owner myself, I would rather spend a bit more money and hire a very good performer than spend less money and run the risk of hiring a bad performer. So how can we go from this efficiency thinking to impact thinking? So what we're trying to achieve with HR. That's what people analytics is enabling us. Just by looking at the data and seeing, is the manager still happy with the new candidate a year after we've hired them? And if so, then it was well worth the money we invested in hiring that person. But that's not enough, because now we're still thinking in an HR mindset. We're still thinking, how can we hire the perfect fit so the manager is happy with how we perform? The bigger question is, how can we as HR take an outside-in approach? How can we look at, hey, what are the goals of our organization, and how can we, in the way we function, enable the organization to boost this? So what are we trying to achieve if we hire account managers? We want to grow market share, we want to increase the number of customers, we want to increase the value per customer that a customer is bringing in. So how are these hires that we're bringing in, how are they enabling that business result? And if we leverage people analytics, if we have the data and we use the data to drive that kind of thinking, then we're actually making an impact. And I think that's why people analytics has really caught on in the last few years, because it enables us to try to measure and to connect the dots between what we're doing in HR with what the business is trying to achieve. And in that way we become a true strategic partner. So that brings us to the HR value chain. The HR value chain, as you can see, has three segments. It starts on the very left with HR efficiency. On the very left you see the HRM activities and processes. So what are we trying to optimize in HR? Well, for example, we're trying to optimize the cost of hiring people, or the time of hiring people. You know, the two famous metrics, I would say, in recruitment. But what does that bring us? You know, in the end, we're trying to achieve a certain outcome, which is the middle category, the effectiveness category, or the HR outcomes. Well, we try to achieve a good quality of hire, because that's what we're trying to do. And, you know, we try to do that in an efficient way, but if we have, as I just said, if we have to spend more money on trying to get a good quality of hire, you know, then it's an alright investment. But then in the end, we're trying to make impact. We go all the way to the right in this model. We're trying to achieve and align what we're doing in HR with organizational objectives. So if we hire the right people, what kind of business impact does that make? And that's why I really like this HR value chain. And later in the workshop, we'll take a deeper dive in this and also look at a bigger model, the causal model behind this all, to find, hey, how can we leverage metrics in HR to, in the end, make better data-driven decisions. But that's, I'm not trying to promote you to come to the workshop over there. So these organizational objectives, in the end, are important. And what we're doing in HR, in people analytics, and also in digital HR, is trying to boost this, you know, these organizational goals. And everything we do should align. So I'll give you a different example. On the very left you see training, for example. So if we try to train people, you know, what are the metrics that we keep track of? How many training days do our people get? And, you know, what's the training budget that people get? We're very adamant at making sure that we have the right training budget for our employees. The training budget doesn't really say about outcomes, it's just a focus on, you know, efficiency. So what are the outcomes you're trying to drive with training? In the end, you know, and I see someone nodding, so that's good. In the end, you're trying to make people more competent. You're trying to make them, you know, the job that they have, you want to fit the skills that they have with the job that they have. Because if people have the skills to do the job that they, you know, have the skills that are required to do the job, they'll be happier, they'll be more engaged, they'll come to work with a cheer, and they'll be happy and work hard and push harder to do more. So you try to invest in training in order to build competency, and that competency then is, you know, important because your financial people run the numbers better, make better prognosis. Your account managers are able to bring in more money, are able to upsell more accounts. There's a certain business impact. And as HR, we need to take more of an outside-in approach, say, hey, what are the targets that we're trying to achieve? And then do we have the right means to focus on that, going away from, you know, focusing on cost, focusing on investment, more to focusing on this impact. And Dave already calls this, you know, the outside-in approach. What are we trying to do? What are our customers looking to get? Because the customer is actually in a field, you know, even more to the right. What value is the customer trying to achieve? How can we enable this through our organizational outcomes, and how can we, as HR, drive that in a better way? So that brings us to digital HR. The question is, what is digital HR? Digital HR is the set of software applications used to develop HR services and business value. Now that's a bit of a fuzzy definition, and I promise you to make digital HR clearer. You know, what is digital HR now really? Digital HR is almost everything we do in HR, unless we're still working with paper drawers and you know, the boxes full of paper. Who is still using boxes full of paper for HR processes? I see a few hands going up like, I'm not going to put this too high so everyone sees this. This is still happening, and I have a lot of stories of people who are, you know, who try migrating all those boxes to systems, and it's a challenge, and some of you might remember those times very vividly still, and I see some people nodding, so that doesn't need any more explanation. Digital HR is a process of getting rid of those paper boxes, those boxes full of paper, and integrating this into systems. And this started off very simple because, you know, we had the paper boxes in a way, and then we came with a human resource information system, and we said, hey, we can digitize all this data, let's just put it in the system, you know, and then it's all digital, which is great. But it's a very one-dimensional way of a one-dimensional system, because the system reports data, it checks the data, it does its job. It does the job in a sense because it collects data, but that's everything it does. And digital HR is about getting more value from those simple systems. So how can we integrate those systems? How can we use those systems, leverage them, connect them with each other in order to get more value from what we're doing in HR? And that brings us to this picture. I don't know the translation, but on my screen it says, and I'll move out of the way. By the way, this is not a model that I thought of. This is coming from Greenhouse. In the blue part, you see ELTV, or employee lifetime value. So what is the monetary value that an employee brings in over their lifetime? And don't take lifetime too literally, the lifetime at your company. So the time that they stay at your company, people bring in money because we're an organization, we're trying to make money. And people who stay with us for 1 year and then quit, maybe they don't bring in money or they bring in a little bit of money. People who stay for 5, 10 or 15 years and are top performers, they bring in much more money. So can we think about HR in a more financial way? Can we think about what is the lifetime value that an employee brings in? And what can we do in HR to, that's the orange part, to increase this lifetime value? Because if we're able to manage people in a better way, people will be more productive, likely, and stay longer. So that brings us a certain financial return on investment. And that brings it down to the orange part. So it starts with very simple selective hiring. We want to hire the best people. And if we do our hiring processes the right way, we'll be able to get people who are able to do the job better. There's a better fit between the job and the person, and that leads to positive financial outcomes. But it also has to do with onboarding. Once we've hired the right person, we need to bring them up to speed ASAP, and people need to start delivering value. How do we get people to that optimum productivity level as soon as possible? It has to do with performance appraisal. How do we, appraise performance in a structured way? It has to do with compensation. Do we compensate people fairly in our organizations? It has to do with training. Do we give the right training? Do we make sure that people are challenged, that they can make the next step, that they are actually, there's one more coming, so I see a lot of people taking pictures, but you'll keep making pictures, because the last one is engagement. How can we make people more engaged and make sure that over the time they stay at the company, they're also at an optimum productivity level. And I think this slightly more financial way of thinking is a way of thinking that puts much more the organizational objectives square in front, and forces us to think about what is the value that we as HR are delivering to employees, but broader also to the business. And digital HR is about increasing this ROI of the employee journey, because the process that I just showed, and it's a very a model, of course, it's a simplified version of the employee journey. How do we increase that value for the employee? Because if we increase value for the employee, if the employee has a better experience, and that's, everyone is talking about employee experience these days. If the employee has a better experience, the organization will, in a way, also have a better experience, as in the organization will benefit financially, and probably not only financially, also when you talk about climate, organizational trust, these are all things that benefit from creating a better employee journey. So the question is, how can we use digital and digital technology to create a better employee journey? And I think that can be very, very simple, and I'll give an example later on. So the question, I'll get the example now actually. So I'll go back. If you think about integrating the employee journey in your systems, this can be very practical, because remember when we were hiring people. There we go. I'll start a bit over. If we think about if we think about aligning that employee process, we think about, as I said, selective. There's a miscommunication between the two. I'll start looking at this screen, but I can't read Russian, so that'll be a bit of a challenge. I'll have to rely on memory. If we start thinking about the employee journey, it's, you know, the first step was selective hiring. When we hire someone, we never hire the person who is, you know, the perfect fit. Because if we hire the perfect fit, that person will be more than half a year and, you know, go on to the next job. We hire people who can grow into the job, and people we are confident in that they'll be able to achieve a, you know, a competency level within a few months, within half a year in their job, and so they stay, you know, because they have the feeling that they still learn. So when we hire people, we usually have a conception of, you know, they should improve A, B, and C. We hire this product manager, and she's really very good, but I think she should improve a bit more on her project management skills. You know, that's a preconception we have. What do we do with this information now? Usually it's in our head and we forget about it. What if we can feed that information in our learning management system and in our performance appraisal system? So the next time that person comes in and logs in, you know, onboards and logs into their employee system, and they join the learning management system, the first course that pops up, you know, is about project management, because we've identified that that's probably an area they should be working on. And what if in their performance appraisal, that's the part where the evaluation will focus on most. You know, that creates an incentive for the employee to really focus on this and to really learn this, because they will be appraised, and maybe their compensation and their next bonus will depend on how quickly they've mastered these project management skills that are so vital for this new job. So digital HR to me is very much not just about going from paper boxes to digital systems. It's about integrating those different systems, creating in a sense a workforce of one where we can make customized applications for our individual employees, and in the end deliver much more value. Because, as I already said, in the end, if employees have all the tools, all the job resources they need in order to do the job, they'll be more engaged in the end. They'll be happy to come to work because they have the skills and the capabilities to do the job properly. So this brings us, and maybe I've already spoiled it a bit, this brings us to why digital HR is important. Digital HR enables better streamlined HR process through this smart software deployment and this integration of different skills. So if we are able to integrate the customer journey in a smart way, we are able to connect it. We very simply